Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Resilience in Tech Startup Scale-Up at London Tech Week Connects. I hope you had some time to do some good networking on the platform. My name is Russ Shaw, founder of Tech London Advocates and Global Tech Advocates. Now, our next session is called Survival Mode, How to Adapt Practically and Quickly. And just a quick reminder that questions can be submitted via the Q&A box just to the right of your screen. I'm delighted to welcome Janet Coyle, Managing Director, Business at London & Partners, who will introduce and lead the panel discussion. And in her role at L&P, Janet supports international companies and events in London. She also helps London's innovative companies to scale and expand internationally through the Mayor's International Business Program, and also with Silicon Valley comes to the UK. And in whatever spare time she has left, Janet also co-leads the Tech London Advocates Scaleup group. So Janet, welcome to you and welcome to your panel.
Thanks so much, Russ, for that lovely introduction. It's a really interesting panel we're going to have now. I think we all know, and probably a lot of our audience, and appreciate how important resilience has been for entrepreneurs over the last few months. I think they've all, and you all, have probably had to sort of dig deep, to pivot, collaborate, reorganize, look after your cash flow, see how much runway you have, look after your staff's well-being, keep a laser sharp focus on revenue. So many things that our business leaders, our CEOs, our entrepreneurs have really got to focus on. And today I'm joined by some fantastic scale-up leaders who have to address these points every single day. But before I introduce them, I thought I would just ask you, the audience, what your challenges are right now and what they've been over the last few months. And looking ahead to the next few months, we all know that we're in a marathon here. That's not something, we're not going to have a magic wand and everything's suddenly going to be different tomorrow. So we've got a poll here for you. And can you please just let us know, out of this list that you can see on the screen, which of these challenges are really prevalent for you right now as a business, or maybe even as an individual? We'll give you a little bit of time. And while you're it should be a really quick poll anyway, but while you're doing that, I just want to introduce the panel. So we have Melissa Morris, who's CEO and founder of Lantum, a scheduling and workforce management platform for healthcare. Lantum has taken the NHS by storm and is now the #1 staffing platform by number of clients, thousands of clients across the NHS, 1,500 actually. It's also launched in the US and won multiple awards, including Amazon Web Services Digital Business of the Year last year. So can't wait to hear more from Melissa. We've got Hannah Dawson, who's the founder and CEO of Futrli. Futrli is a product that's helping lots of small businesses to predict some of their results, their analysis, using AI-driven products, looking at cash flow, cash management, non-financial prediction. So really important piece of technology, especially through a crisis like this. She was chosen as one of the Maserati 100 in the 2019 cohort in association with the Sunday Times. So we've got a brilliant panel here. Thirdly, we've got Mridula from Peppy. Again, another sort of health tech, but more wellness related business. So Peppy provides health support to employees going through life's big transitions, such as becoming a parent or going through the menopause or going through COVID-19. And Peppy is really doing a lot now in pivoting towards the public sector, which we'll hear a little bit more about shortly. But this is a business that's really been driven by the founder's passion for affordable, accessible healthcare with her love of innovation. Before moving into digital health, she led NHS service redesign projects at McKinsey, and Melissa's also ex-McKinsey, so I know it's sort of a really great place for creating brilliant entrepreneurs. And then we've got Duncan Barrigan, Chief Product Officer and Acting Chief Growth Officer for GoCardless, which has become a really strong brand internationally, not just in the UK. Founded in 2011, many of you will know GoCardless, a global leader in recurring payments. And the business is on a real mission to take the pain out of getting paid for recurring revenue businesses. So it's been a real critical provider of support during the last few months for many, many businesses So absolutely thrilled that Duncan has been able to spare the time and join us today. So before we, sorry, bear with me a second, before we go into really sort of digging out, I just want to have a quick look at these results. So 36, growing new clients and partnerships. That's a really interesting challenge, because I think when we're all working on these digital platforms, it's not quite as easy as going along to events and being connected. So I'll try and tease out of the panel how they've managed to grow new clients and partnerships through COVID-19. And the second one is sort of new ways of working and talent. I mean, talent always comes up. All the work we do with the Scaleup Institute and others across the ecosystem, it's the number one challenge, and also maybe in some ways an opportunity for scale-ups. Okay, so let's get into this conversation, because I'm absolutely thrilled with who I've got with me this afternoon. I think, Duncan, I'm going to come to you first, because I'm sort of reading a little bit more about GoCardless. I was familiar with GoCardless, but I found a sort of really interesting quote that your founder made at the end of last year, who said that, "I believe that 2020 will be remembered as the year that fintechs truly go global. And not only is this an exciting moment in our industry, it crucially introduces innovative business models to new markets. At GoCardless, we announced the world's first global network for direct debit. And very soon, our American-grown competitors are going to be coming over here to our shores to try and get that market share." So a really bold statement, which I loved, especially for a British company. It was great. So on reflection, now we're sort of a few months into 2020. I'd love to hear from you, Duncan, about whether you still have these ambitions, whether you've had to adapt, and how you have pivoted, and also to make sure that you're sort of meeting all the needs of your international customers.
Thanks, Janet. Yeah, I think we all made some bold predictions in various forms. I did some at our internal offsite where I talked about what I thought 2020 was going to be. And obviously, a lot of us have been proved hilariously wrong in all sorts of ways. I think the headline from us really has been that 2020 hasn't changed anything about our long-term, our ambitions and our long-term belief in the potential. But I think it has really shown how many things can be thrown up in the air along the way. So we've been quite public actually about some of the impacts on GoCardless and Hiroki. Even published a blog post about it. But as I said, what we found is that the long-term demand and actually the new business you mentioned in the survey results has been as strong as ever for us. But we've sort of seen a tale of two worlds, because we serve everything from digital services companies that are seeing soaring demand to thousands of scout groups, and obviously the scout groups and the gyms and things have closed. So what's been fascinating for us is that we've had that kind of simultaneous counter cyclicality and cyclicality, if you see what I mean. So we had, and we've been public about it, we had about a 15% drop in payment processing that came in April as a result of lockdown. That's temporary. It is scout groups that will bounce back. But we also signed our biggest ever deal in April, if you see what I mean. So we've had this sort of dichotomy, and that's led us to all sorts of interesting sort of challenges about how to handle that as a business. And as I said, but fundamentally in the short term, because the long term looks as promising as anything. So yeah, it's very much been a sort of a picture of two modes, very promising long term, but some short term bits when obviously scout groups and gyms aren't open anymore.
Where are you seeing those growth sectors then, without saying who the deal was with? I mean, where are you seeing the opportunities?
Yeah, it's been really interesting to watch this, and it is starting to change around the world as well, because obviously as a global business, we're starting to find that things are starting to diverge between how it's all progressing in Australia and New Zealand, and versus the US versus the UK. So some signs have come probably exactly where you'd expect, in that the SaaS in particular and global SaaS obviously many things are being driven online. It sort of accelerated a lot of that digital transition, and we've got some customers that are exactly the types of SaaS companies you'd expect, where that's that has really driven things up. We've also found that because fundamentally our product solves a cash flow problem, we've seen a lot of people who are interested now, because suddenly that becomes more acute, and getting paid on time obviously has a huge impact on your cash flow. So that's been across all different types of business. But we've also had some really random ones that have been actually, a lot of gyms are suddenly interested in sorting out their payment processing because they haven't really got anything else to think about at the moment because the gym's closed. So we've actually seen some sort of counter-cyclicality on both sides. It's been really interesting.
So would you say from an international market perspective, if you were to say, which of the three markets you're going after in the short term? Would you say it is Australia, New Zealand, or are you still going after the US and some of the others?
Yeah, so first, our biggest markets, obviously, we started here in London, here in the UK. France and Germany have always been big markets. We've been developing them over the years. The more recent new ones, we've been pushing heavily Australia and New Zealand and the US in particular, and we're seeing really great traction across all of those new markets. To be honest, like the things we see are often that the UK is the part that is being more affected by by lockdown, by COVID. Is what we're finding in the recurring space actually is that the UK is probably the one of those that's been the most impacted, I'd say.
Okay, thank you for that. I mean, I want to turn to Melissa now, because going from that sort of international focus to sort of thinking about how you've had to pivot with Lantum here in the UK when there was this almost like this opportunity. If you could just share with us, Melissa, how you've had to pivot your business.
Yeah, so I think like the one learning that I've had from this whole thing has just been the more agile you can be, the more likely you are going to survive. I think it's the most agile companies that survive and come out the other side stronger, rather than the companies that appear strong at the start but don't manage to adapt. So for us, we spent the 2019 launching in the US. I spent probably about 60% of my time on the West Coast of the US. And we launched with a really large hospital, Cedars-Sinai Hospital in California. And when lockdown happened, obviously, I was quite fortunate to be locked down in London and not in LA, but when it happened, the hospital that we were working with, we were kind of midway through implementation, and they had to completely reconfigure all of their services. So elective procedures had to stop, and they had to basically completely reorganize. So they had no time to continue the implementation of the large scale project that we had. And the hospitals that were in our pipeline in the US, all of them were just kind of like, head down, trying really hard to adapt themselves to survive. So what this meant was kind of all of the longer term projects that we had started, which were big building blocks to our long-term vision, had to be put on ice. And so then we started looking around at actually where are the opportunities that we, as a health tech organization with the largest footprint of clinicians and organizations on our platform, there must be some way that we can lean into the crisis, help the NHS, but also create opportunities for ourselves. Yeah. And what we found was actually NHS England needed a platform to help redistribute clinicians across the country. And what it meant was we would have to adapt our platform. So it would probably take around a month to adapt the platform to suit their needs. But it meant that actually we would be able to support the NHS during this time, as well as be able to continue to operate and not be too adversely impacted by the crisis. So we decided to do it, and it was all at the same time as I actually contracted COVID, and the team started working remotely. Like, there were so many changes going on, and we set up like completely different ways of working, new project teams. We disbanded sort of traditional team boundaries and kind of put new people into new teams, people who hadn't worked together before. But I think the fact that we were able to align everybody to this new goal, and I think everyone had this sense of purpose because it was for the NHS, that really helped to motivate people and get everybody rowing in the same direction. But it did require, like very heavy communication. So we spoke every single day. I gave kind of daily briefings to the organization. And yeah, everybody really pulled out all the stops, particularly the product and tech team, who ended up working, night and day and weekends for 3 weeks. And then we managed to get it live. And actually, as soon as we got it live, our US clients ended up coming back. So we've now kind of gone back to our longer term. Yeah.
Can I just ask a quick question on that? So maybe lots of businesses who are listening in today, maybe they're trying to still access the NHS to say, look, I've got a great product, I can really help with this crisis. You were already quite engaged with them, were you, with all your current clients? Any advice for people out there who are still wanting to offer their services?
Yeah, if anybody does want advice, I'm really happy to to take it offline because it's probably quite a long answer. I actually, so when I,
today, but anything quick.
So we were already operating within the NHS. So we already had, we had 1,500 clients in the NHS before. Now we've actually got 2,000 because we signed a deal which was 500 GP practices during COVID. But essentially it's a very long answer, but essentially it kind of means you just have to like knock on every single door, because people think the NHS is one organisation, and actually it's a collection of like 30 organisations across the country. And so, you know, it's not really that you kind of, there is NHS England, but typically they don't procure things on a national scale. But I think during COVID it was slightly different. But yeah, I think essentially it's kind of treating it as many, many organizations and not treating it as one organization, and then trying to align yourself with the brand as much as possible. So we joined like the NHS Innovation Accelerator, which was quite impactful for us. And I also actually used to work for the NHS when I was at McKinsey, and then did a year on secondment there after, like during McKinsey as well. So I was quite.
It sounds like you had a lot of resilience and a lot of persistence, Melissa, as well. I think it's a great quality. And I just want to bring in Mridula here because, you know, you've also got experience of now working with the public sector. And I'm not sure if you had those connections before COVID-19 or you've sort of suddenly found that there was more demand.
Well, our journey was quite interesting because we weren't working with the public sector at all. We were working with employers across a range of different sectors, professional services firms, retail banks, you know, blue chips, etc., to offer the Peppy platform and services to their employees. And when the lockdown happened, I mean, of course, a lot of our HR teams were suddenly, you know, frantically busy trying to handle people working remotely. The furlough scheme came into place. Things were very busy. We did two things. One, we wanted to continue to stay relevant to the needs of our clients. So we were on the phones, you know, like what's going on? How can we help? What do you need? And one of the biggest concerns was handling that transition for their employees into remote working. So we very quickly were able to put together, using our existing platform, a slightly different service offering, which was around supporting people's mental well-being as they're going through this transition.
Right.
The other thing that we had was we were listening to what was happening to our practitioner communities and the professional bodies, and we were hearing that all of a sudden people who were doing a lot of private practice, you know, some of it was moving online, but in the early days, people's, you know, appointments list had basically collapsed, and that's the source of income for people like counsellors or lactation consultants, you know, who are doing private practice work. We'd also heard that demand, of course, was growing. So as soon as lockdown happened, particularly for our new and expectant parents, you know, grandparents can't be around, antenatal and postnatal services had shrunk, people weren't getting well baby visits, you know, anxiety was massively building up. So we knew there was increasing demand and we knew there was an increasing supply. Now the question was, how do we connect these two things at a point where employers are super preoccupied? And we applied then to the Tech Force 19 initiative, which was a UK government cross-departmental initiative led by NHSX, with a specific remit to support vulnerable and isolated communities in England at the time. And so we, as part of that, got funding to do a feasibility study. We literally within 10 days of hearing the yes, we had to go live with 1,000 people across England. We actually had 10,000 people apply over a weekend to be part of it.
How did you manage to meet that demand then with the business that you had? Did you have to start recruiting more people?
We recruited people within 24 hours for operational support. We brought in extra tech support. We were working around the clock around that time.
You've got that scale, have you? Or are you still scaling?
We're still very much early in our journey. So this was incredibly rapid for us to onboard 1,000 people essentially overnight and recruit them from communities where, you know, we actually ended up doing double the national average of BAME participants, 60% of participants low household income, and we're able to demonstrate within that 2 weeks that we're able to have a massive impact on improving the mental well-being of those participants and having a net reduction on the burden that was being placed on the NHS, more appropriate use. So it was really about, as Melissa said, you know, being super agile, making sure you're continuing to be plugged into what the needs are of all your different stakeholder groups and responding to it super quickly when the opportunity presents itself. Of course, while you've got your own team getting used to working remotely, to handling their own personal situations. We were closing a funding round at the time, so it was crazy times.
I'll come back to that, but did you manage to close the round?
We did. It got announced today.
Wow, well done. Incredible. I think you and Melissa and Duncan, you all make it sound quite easy. And I know it's not. I know it takes a lot of hard work. And as you say, working 24/7. It sounds like that you've been accumulating a lot of valuable data as well. We all know that data's king, and particularly in businesses like yours. And I think, Hannah, the business that you're running and founded is all about the data and really supporting lots and lots and lots of businesses understand their projections. I would imagine that this period of time is really critical for them to be able to sort of look at their short-term, long-term strategies. What are you seeing across the ecosystem with all the businesses and I know you're an advisor as well, in terms of the challenges, are you seeing the same resilience? Because we're hearing a very positive story. Is it all positive?
Yeah, we are. I would say no, sadly not at this juncture. And it's been really interesting looking at the trends of small businesses in the UK and abroad. We're a global business as well, serving small businesses and the accountants that help to advise them or their advisors in their portfolios. And, at the beginning of the March lockdown period, as a business ourselves, we started to see we're monthly MRR, we're not, enterprise sales software. So we started to see a spike in cancellation requests. Well, okay, what's going to happen here? Investors we start to have weekly, meetings, etc. And what's then panned out since then is that actually there was that 1 week that there was a spike. There was then I've been likening our small businesses as, they also need to be triaged. There are some of them who need critical care, some of them who have got more cash in the bank. There are lots of government schemes. I think our government's done an amazing job, whichever side of the fence you sit on. The furlough schemes, the time to pay, the deferments of VAT will have saved businesses. We are all going to, have to pay for that, in the future. And so what's been interesting is that immediate kind of panic happened. Then there was that, okay, hold on a second. There is a way to get through this. The C-bills, in the UK, if we're just looking at the UK only, the C-bills and bounce backs came. And so, forecasts are being prepared. We were arming advisors with as many, trying to democratize this throughout their practices so that they could get to as many small businesses as possible. But what's been interesting over the last week or so is that the feedback that we're getting is that there's a shift into not a denial phase. That's the wrong word potentially, but there's this sense that the weather's been good. People have had some time off. Things aren't. It's okay. It's fine. Well, a recession is about to hit us. It's happening, and we are trying our best. We are getting out there as much as we can to try and ensure that this time is used really wisely. And to Duncan's point about gyms getting their payment, systems in place, this is the time absolutely for scenario modeling, understanding what worst case and even worst case could be, because that preparation is completely key for the bread and butter of our entire economy. Small businesses are 99% of all businesses, right?
Yeah, help prepare for the next step. So Hannah, I'm conscious that there was this poll we did at the beginning around, what are people's biggest challenges? We've got hundreds of people listening into this. And I think one of the biggest challenges was, how do you build partnerships and find new clients during this time? What are you seeing? Those businesses that are managing to be resilient and build new partnerships, how are they doing it? I'll bring others in as well in on this because...
we have partnered with GoCardless. We are actual partners, which is great because it's solving a problem. If we identify a need, we can then help to solve the problem.
Partnering.
But for ourselves that we've been looking at, we've done a lot of work with Swoop Funding, for instance, to really try and help unlock those C-bills loans for them. In our client base, what's been utterly amazing for me, we've been doing bounce back webinars across different industries, just to try and get that mindset in for hospitality, for leisure, for retail. It's been accountants this week and advisors this week, for instance, that the diversification of the product that people are selling, the imagination that some are bringing to the table is just fantastic. And I think that that's going to continue. I think we're all going to work differently. We're not all going to continue to work from home, but I think there's going to be a massive blend. I think the fear factor in how we communicate with each other has been taken away. So this, the driving partnerships through your local community, I think, particularly for small businesses, is really, really key. And, we've been relying on our WhatsApp groups. I've got CEO WhatsApp groups. How are you doing things? Learning from people a little bit ahead of us, just really reaching out and being brutally honest and sharing the position that you're in. I think what a lot of people are realizing, that it's okay, and you'll get some really amazing advice back.
Really good point. Use your network, keep communicating, and tell people if you do need help. Mridula, we've got a question for you specifically. We touched on before about you were just sort of closing a funding round. Do you think that the situation that you were in actually helped because you were pivoting and you were growing? And any advice for founders? Any sort of quick advice founders trying to raise right now?
I think. I think we were lucky in that we basically had the pre-lockdown momentum continuing on. And in the midst of that, we were able to, launch a new service, have new opportunities come up. Yeah. I think that right now the funding opportunity, the market environment has shifted. And I think that leaves different sectors in very different places. Health and wellness has come into sharp relief as something that people are increasingly focusing on. And I think we've definitely benefited from that. But as Duncan was saying earlier, it's affecting different sectors massively differently. And I think the investment appetite is following that. So it somewhat depends on, where you're sitting right now, whether you're finding yourself in the right time at the right place, or, whether it's actually you need to kind of really wait and see how this pans out.
It's sort of some of that whole, what you touched on earlier, is that listening and being aware of those opportunities around you. I know, Melissa, I think you've been sort of applying for various sort of funding grants, haven't you? Have you been successful?
We applied for the Future Fund, which looks like it's been successful, but who knows? We got an email saying we've been provisionally accepted. So I think so long as the KYC of our investors checks out, then it should be. But I think that was I was really impressed with that. I know that for some people, that there was a lot of questions about, it definitely catered for a particular stage of company, and we were really lucky to have qualified, but I felt like it was done really quickly and pretty seamlessly. So I was really, really pleased with that. And also the government furlough scheme, which we used. So there were some areas where there just actually wasn't any work to do because the market has changed during this time. So we were able to make use of that scheme, which just has been fantastic because we haven't had to make anyone redundant. We've kept everybody employed, and so I feel like we've had a real safety net. That many others.
It's nice to hear, because there was a lot of trepidation, wasn't there, in the ecosystem about Future Fund, about the potential lack of diversity and how they were going to track the data on this. So it's really nice sort of to hear a positive. You're not quite there yet, but it does sound like you're on the way to hopefully securing that funding. And Duncan, going back to this partnership, it's great to hear that you've partnered with Hannah's business. Your GoCardless are actually providing a real solution to cash flow challenges. But are you actually open to more partnerships? Because I'm sure there's lots of businesses who are dialing in who would love to have that conversation. So what are you looking for in terms of more partners?
Yeah, we absolutely are open to more partnerships, and it's a big part of how we think about the world. The main part that's always incredibly interesting for us is that I believe that payments should be painless, that no one should be manually collecting their payments, because the systems that they're using, the software that they're using to run their business should be communicating with us and with other payments providers in order to do that. So, the heart of our partnerships really is that product integration. We have plenty of others as well, which is more of sort of the channel side of things, where, we share partners, accounting firms and things who are referring their customers into it because it solves a cash flow problem, if you see what I mean. So they're the kind of channel and product ones. Okay. Both are always interesting.
And we're getting questions in around, quite a few questions around this sort of international export landscape. Do you all think it's going to be easier, harder? You know, we all keep hearing Liz Truss announced about the positive signs around the trade agreements, and the government are doing quite a lot to try and help tech companies, you know, build more business opportunities internationally. What do you think from an entrepreneur perspective? Anyone? Melissa? Duncan?
I think so. We do business in the US. I guess, yeah, I don't know. I'm eager to see. There was they're becoming less and less friendly to foreign-owned businesses in the US for other reasons. And so I'll be interested to see how it plays out. Yeah, I think the move to you know, everybody working remotely and being able to connect, you know, through Zoom, that definitely helps connect,
yeah,
way more globally, because I think before some people, you know, they really do insist on face-to-face, and now that option has been taken away from people. I think that is really helping to connect people.
Yeah. Thanks, Melissa. And Hannah, you mentioned earlier this sort of data that you're looking at in terms of international data, UK data. How are we as a country faring against other markets internationally?
I think, our core markets are the UK, is quite similar to Duncan. I think core markets are UK and ANZ, so Australia, New Zealand, and they haven't been hit as hard, although we're seeing, of course, the tourism side of things has massively impacted them. So it depends on the industry. You know, hospitality have been battered, you know, and that goes globally. But I suppose the biggest question that those businesses are now facing is the viability question. At what point, even if I am allowed to open, is it appropriate for me to actually open? You know, it's not very well the government saying that you can, but should you? Because actually you might end up having to incur more cost with the hand sanitizer person at the door and all of those sorts of things. And it's just those questions, just, you know, we hope that we're helping to answer them.
And okay, so I just want to sort of, I'm going to ask two of you one question, and that's, you know, are you planning, in terms of percentage of how you're spending your time as a business, are you looking at short term, or are you managing to find the time to look further ahead as strategy? Mridula, in terms of how you're sort of looking ahead for Peppy, are you all in the here and now, or are you managing to get your head above the water and look at long term?
Well, I think we're looking at sort of a couple of years time horizon now, you know, because we think that's the sort of, well, it's also two things really. One is the sort of still relatively acute phase at which workplaces are affected. Yeah. And obviously companies' P&Ls are affected, their buying decisions are affected, and also how their budget cycle, you know, we need to work within our clients' budget cycles, which are annual. So we really do need to be looking at least a couple of years out.
Brilliant. I hope you're using Hannah's data to do all these predictions. And Melissa's nodding. So are you looking at similar timeframes?
Yeah. So when it all when everything turned upside down, we were literally just planning day to day, and then in 2-week increments. And now we've actually started going back to we plan 18 months. So we feel like we've got enough information and enough data on how our market's going to change and how our long-term strategy will be impacted through future pandemics as well.
To go with it. Fantastic. Final question for Duncan and Hannah, because I am going to have to wrap this up soon. If you can sort of both share with me sort of one learning, anything that you've changed in the last few months as a business that you would like to continue in the future when we transition out of this. So Duncan first.
Yeah, sure. I guess probably the most interesting thing we've taken away from it is that, you know, as a result of that sort of short-term decline that we saw, we had to take some, you know, some fairly meaningful measures as a business, and we approached that with, you know, a great deal of transparency and proactivity to our team. And we were kind of quite overwhelmed by the positive reaction that came from the team on that, and the things that we'd done, which was a surprise given, you know, it's kind of fundamentally short-term negative news to the people, if you see what I mean. So it really pulled people together, and I think it really reinforced the importance of that, you know, that transparency and that trust. So I'd love to keep that pulling together that we saw as a result of, you know, everyone really feeling like we were in it together as a company, even though, you know, we're more than 400 people around the world these days. So yeah, we'd really love to keep that.
Transparency and trust. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Duncan. And Hannah?
would agree with Duncan's point completely. But I think one thing, just there's been a shift that, we are all selling products. However we dress it up, we're selling, our own software. But there's been a mental shift, I think, to really try and help our customers and think about, sales and all of those things as secondary to helping them get through, and thinking about our relationships with our customers in a much more long-term fashion, more than just they have renewed their subscription this month, So that's been a really positive change that we'll definitely continue.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, all of you. I could continue talking for another hour because I think all of you have got such valuable insights and experience to share. We've talked about the importance of listening, the transparency, trust, agility. Communication comes up a lot. But above all, I think all of you have shown real resilience. And thanks for sharing all your experiences today. I really appreciate it. And back to Russ. Thank you.
Right, Janet, thank you very much. And my thanks to Melissa, Hannah, Mridula, and Duncan for a great discussion. I listened to that panel and I just think I'm so inspired by the leaders we have running our startups and scale-ups in this great ecosystem. It gives me great confidence and hope that we're going to get through this pandemic and we're going to have many, many strong businesses that are going to take us forward in this next wave of innovation. So my thanks to all of you. This now concludes day 3 of London Tech Week Connects. And I hope you've enjoyed hearing from a variety of different leaders about all of their stories and experiences as it relates to resilience in tech. Our final day of London Tech Week Connects kicks off tomorrow, and it's being presented by Accelerate Her, and it features a variety of world-leading women in tech. So listen to this list of who's going to be speaking tomorrow. You have to be there. Laura Stebbing, who leads Accelerate Her, Elizabeth Broderick from Male Champions of Change Institute, Ariana Huffington from Thrive Global, Simone Tate from Poppy Seed Health, Dr. Hayatun Silam from the Royal Academy of Engineering, Michelle Zatlin from Cloudflare, Deborah Okenla from Your Startup, Your Story, otherwise known as YSYS, Abedesi Osusade from Hustle Crew, Anne-Marie Imafidon from STEMEX, Vivian Hunt from McKinsey, and at 4:10 p.m. UK time tomorrow, there will be a conversation featuring Cherie Blair and Hillary Rodham Clinton on the state of the world for women. So a session that you cannot miss. So an amazing lineup awaits all of you tomorrow at London Tech Week Connects. I hope you will join us, and thanks for joining us today.